Ladies and gentlemen, your favorite late-night pit stop for hot dogs and questionable sushi has just been exposed. ICE agents didn't just bust a store. They busted an entire chain of 7-Elevens. Over 100 stores shut down, more than 1,000 fake IDs seized, and store owners are headed straight from selling taquitos to serving hard time. Forget thank you, come again. So it's now hello federal prison. Picture this, you walk into your local 7-Eleven. At 2 a.m., you're thinking, let me grab a Slurpee. Maybe some nachos with that mysterious cheese sauce. But instead of the cashier ringing up snacks, investigators found a full-blown fraud operation. Over 1,000 fake IDs tied to illegal hiring networks, shady backroom dealings, and more paperwork scams in the DMV. Tax evasion, check money laundering, double check. Organized crime using Slurpee machines as camouflage. Triple check. This wasn't a corner store AC. This was a criminal enterprise with a big gulp sign on the front. The only convenience here was how convenient it was for criminals to cash in while pretending to sell hot dogs. Lotto tickets.
What happens when ICE goes after a nationwide network of stores linked to identity fraud? Nearly 100 7-Eleven franchises been raided in what now called the largest immigration raid in the U.S., with over 1,000 fake IDs seized.
The largest immigration raid against any employer since President Trump took office. Yesterday, federal agents targeted nearly 100 7-Eleven stores across the country, including a handful in Dallas.
The operation's reach was staggering. 100 stores across multiple states were hit. The raids weren't scattered. They were targeted, coordinated, and calculated. Over 21 arrests were made. Workers living illegally in the U.S. were detained, managers arrested, and store owners exposed for their role in this fraud-filled web. But this wasn't just about removing workers. This was about cutting down on illegal practices that have been running beneath the radar for far too long. Fraudulent identities, stolen social security numbers, and undocumented labor were the backbone of an operation that 7-Eleven owners turned a blind eye to.
Good morning, guys. When nearly 100 7-Eleven stores in 17 states were raided Wednesday, including 6 in Dallas. 21 workers suspected of being in the country illegally were arrested. None of them were in Dallas. Now, yesterday's raids targeted store owners and managers who were asked to produce hiring records with workers' immigration status. The feds say the 7-Eleven owners gave them stolen identities and housed them at residences. Now, 7-Eleven said in a statement that store owners are responsible for hiring and verifying work eligibility.
Now let's talk consequences. These franchise owners thought they were slick, but Uncle Sam doesn't play around when it comes to fake IDs and stolen taxes. Instead of managing shifts, they're about to be managing cellmates. Federal prison time isn't like running a 24/7's convenience store. You can't swap shifts, you can't close early, and you definitely don't get Slurpee breaks. These folks went from open 24/7s to locked up 24/7s. Imagine thinking you're the boss of your own franchise, and then realizing, no PES OT, the feds are your new managers, and instead of promotions, the only thing you're getting is parole hearings. These people didn't buy a 7-Eleven. They bought themselves 7 to 11 years minimum behind bars.
ICE wasn't just knocking on doors, they were shutting down operations. The raids were vast, sweeping across 17 states. From Dallas to Santa Rosa to North Sebastopol, ICE targeted 7-Eleven stores nationwide, 6 in Dallas alone, and others scattered far and wide. The operation wasn't random, it was precise, leveraging years of investigation, targeted intelligence, and an airtight strategy. But then this wasn't just about undocumented workers. The raid took aim at the employers who used stolen identities to boost their profits, circumventing e-verify systems and employment laws. Store owners, managers, and franchisees were found to be housing workers in substandard conditions and falsifying paperwork to get around the law. These weren't innocent mistakes, but calculated actions to save money by hiring illegal workers without verifying their immigration status. ICE Deputy Director said this was a direct message to employers.
In a statement, ICE Deputy Director Thomas Homan called today's actions a strong message to U.S. employers hiring illegal workers, saying in a statement, businesses that hire illegal workers are a pull factor for illegal immigration, and we are working hard to remove this magnet. ICE will continue its efforts to protect jobs for American workers by eliminating unfair competitive advantages for companies that exploit illegal immigration.
The evidence was clear. These weren't slip-ups, but intentional fraud. The store owners were actively participating in enabling the illegal labor market, exploiting undocumented workers for cheap labor, and profiting from their fear. So when ICE hit these stores, they didn't just seize illegal workers, but exposed a fraudulent network. The aftermath? A swift execution of justice that sent ripples across the entire franchise network. ICE wasn't just targeting employees, but the root cause of illegal labor, sending a message that there are consequences for those who continue to break the law. The closures were a huge blow to the affected franchise owners, but they were also a clear statement of accountability. If you thought you could make a quick buck by exploiting the system, think again. But the investigation behind this wasn't just a couple of weeks old, it was years in the making, with ICE closely monitoring suspicious activity, gathering intel, and waiting for the right moment to strike. And when they did, they brought the full force of the law, not just for the workers, but for the business owners who turned a blind eye to the rules. For the workers, this was a wake-up call. Many of them were swept up in the chaos, arrested and detained, some even facing deportation. Immigration attorney Juan Carlos believed this was a clear message: leave or get your papers.
It's sending a message to those people who are here, unfortunately, out of status. I don't like to use the word illegal, but who don't have a legal status in the country, that if you don't have papers, either find a way to get them or leave, go back to your country.
But for the franchise owners, the consequences were even more severe. Not only were their stores shut down, but they were also facing criminal charges, fines, and the loss of labor. For many of these franchisees, they were operating with the false belief that they could keep their businesses running on the backs of undocumented workers without facing consequences. But those days are over. This raid was part of a much bigger strategy to crack down on businesses exploiting the system. ICE had exposed the supply chain of fake IDs, and now the target was clear. Anyone caught facilitating this kind of labor would face major consequences.
But here's the bigger story. This wasn't just about a couple shady stores. This operation shows how organized crime infiltrates normal, everyday businesses. Right under our noses. That 7-Eleven down the street? Yeah? Turns out it might have been running a side hustle, moving fake documents faster than Red Bull moves cans. Authorities are calling this one of the biggest retail chain busts in years. And it's not just about immigration, it's about a massive system of fraud, trafficking, and stolen tax money that regular Americans end up paying for. Meanwhile, politicians keep fighting over open borders versus law and order, but ICE just proved something. While Washington argues, criminals are literally hiding behind neon Slurpee signs. This bust is a wake-up call if fraud is this deep in a corner store. Imagine what's happening in bigger industries. So, the next time you hit up 7-Eleven for a snack run, just know Wes if the cashier tries to hand you a fake social security card along with your big gulp. You might not be in a store, you might be in the middle of an FBI sting. This ain't 7-Eleven anymore, folks. This is SBI 11.